Hey, how's it going, everybody? I am Michael Sayre, the design manager here at Paizo, with my compatriot, senior designer James Case. We are here to talk to you about the playtest for an upcoming book called Pathfinder: War of Immortals. The War of Immortals book is going to have two new classes who we are going to talk to you about today. It's also going to have some exciting new materials that you all have to wait to get details about, but I'm going to give you a couple little tastes of what's to come. This will have lots of archetypes for characters who might want to get involved in a war involving immortal beings. And I had mentioned the last time I talked about this that one of the reasons it was not revealing the title yet was because War of Immortals was a spoiler. One of the cool things you'll notice in a bunch of these archetypes and in the classes is that they have capstone feats that make your characters immortal with a whole bunch of different flavors of immortality. Whether that be the standard unaging deathlessness, whether it be constant reincarnation and rebirth, or all kinds of cool things like that. So that is going to be an awesome amount of content coming your way. And of course, as previously mentioned, the opening of that book is going to involve the death of one of the core 20 deities in Galarian. But that's not what we're here to talk about today. Today, we're here to talk about two new classes, and some of you correctly guessed their names. They are the animist and the exemplar. Am the design lead on the animist, and I will tell you a little bit more about her and her abilities soon. But first, I'm going to hand the mic over to James so he can introduce himself and tell you a little bit about his class.
Hi everyone, I'm James Case. I'm senior designer here on the Rules and Lore team, and I will be working on a class called the Exemplar. The Exemplar is a fun class. It is our newest, very combat-oriented class, and they are very larger than life. I know some of you have seen our new iconic, who I am excited to talk about him when we get to that. But I think let's start with the Animus. Let's just go alphabetically.
Yeah, alphabetically works. So, the animist. Our iconic here is Samo. Samo of Icemark, a middle-aged Varki woman from the lands of the Linorm Kings in the northernmost reaches of the Inner Sea region. Samo is a Nephilim, a mortal being with a touch of the celestial planes in her bloodline. Some of you may have noticed if you were playing our Instagram minigame that the iconics have solid colored eyes. They don't have any irises or pupils, and that is because of their extraplanar heritage. That is, they each gain it in a different way. Sama was born with this touch of the celestial in her bloodline, and it gave her the ability to see spirits and other entities that other people could not. So she was selected by the elders of Seir's home at a young age after her abilities helped her save her village from a Kushtaka incursion and was trained in the arts of animism. She was proclaimed a sage, which is one of the two animist practices, the subpaths available to help customize your character, after she successfully bonded with her grandmother's spirit, an apparition known as a custodian of groves and gardens. If you've seen that art there, there's that deer, which is actually an elk behind her that has the growing branches and leaves coming out of its antlers. That is her apparition. So the Animist is a full casting class that has a kind of interesting and unique spell progression that we built to answer a lot of both mechanically ways that people wanted to interact with spellcasters, and then also to tell some very interesting stories that are different than kind of the way we normally tell these. So the big thing that every animist can do is they can bond with apparitions. Like I said, the one that we depict Sama with there is an apparition of groves and gardens. Her normal spellcasting chassis is that she is a wisdom-based divine caster. But since she is bonded with that apparition of groves and gardens, it adds primal healing and plant-based spells to her repertoire that she can draw upon. And every one of these apparitions also comes with a cool vessel spell. This is a one action sustainable focus spell that gives you a big injection of themed mechanics that allow you to fulfill kind of a key secondary role. So one of the things about the Animist is there have been classes that had spiritual elements, and there have been concepts that have this spiritual element in them in the game before, but none of them quite do what we wanted to do here. None of them quite tell the story we wanted to tell or work in the way we wanted to tell it. Um, Going back to some of my earliest days when I first started homebrewing and stuff, one of my favorite classes in the Dragon game was a class called the Binder. And the Binder had this cool ability to bind with vestiges that gave it these neat abilities, and kind of you always had to do this pact making with them. And conceptually, it was really cool, but it was also kind of limited. You wouldn't always be guaranteed to do the things you wanted to do. And then in Pathfinder in first edition, we had a class called the Medium. And the Medium was similarly this like idea of I want to make pacts with spirits, and I want those spirits to give me abilities. But again, it didn't quite do what we wanted to do. You had to be in the right environment to get the right spirit attached to you to do the right thing. And even if you made all of your choices right, like if you picked one that made you a little bit of a fightery type character, you wouldn't actually be as good a fighter as having a fighter there. And so it offered flexibility, but outside of one kind of particular archetype, that flexibility only existed at the start of the day and was really limited to, you know, you kind of having to play a guessing game of what was going to be needed. And even if you guessed right, it didn't exactly give you that like big shot of, oh man, I'm really good at doing this thing that I chose to do correctly. And so taking these elements and learning from them as we've evolved the game, just like we've continuously learned from everything we've done in Pathfinder second edition since the start of the edition, we really dug into how do we make a class that is always going to be good at a particular role, but also have this flexibility to adopt other roles and learn different ways to participate and give new additions to the party based on what they need and what maybe the player wants. If the player wants to change up how they interact with the game, how their character does what their character wants to do. And so leading into that, we created these apparitions, and they are kind of the first building block along with their vessel spells. I'm going to get deeper into the apparitions later on in this, but I just kind of want to touch on the basic spell progression here. You
It
always
really
have
does feel like they kind of bring their own like abilities with you to kind of supplement your main character. Like it's not only some of the magic, like, you know, they know a little bit about various parts that it would make sense for them to know about. And so they can share not only their magic for in combat, but also just their general knowledge with you. It makes sense an ancient spirit would, you know a thing or two about forests or battlefields or what have you.
Exactly. So that is one thing that your apparition does. They lend you their knowledge. They also lend you their magic, and that magic can be anything that is appropriate to that apparition. They each have their own list of spells from first through ninth level that they give you. And maybe if it's a spooky, dark apparition, it gives you some occult spells that are based around sneaking and invisibility and darkness. Or maybe it is an apparition that has primal power and it throws fire and earth and lava around and gives you those kind of spells and abilities. So all of these different things graphed on there, and you have this base pool of slotted spells that you use to put in your divine magic, and then you have another pool of spell slots in addition to that that are granted to you, and you can cast them from any of the apparitions that you currently have bonded with. At first level, right out the gate, you don't have just one, you have two. You choose one of them as your primary apparition, and that's the one where you can use their focus spell and you get kind of the most oomph out of them. And then you have another one that is a secondary apparition that still gives you some of their knowledge and that extra pool of spells that you can spontaneously choose from. As you go up, you'll gain a third and then a fourth apparition, and all of these apparitions will give you this collective pool that you can use from for those spontaneous slots that graft onto your smaller pool of prepared slots. And so this gives you a huge degree of neat flexibility and options that give you a spell casting methodology that is different from anything else we've put in the game thus far. Uh, then you're going to choose your animistic practice. And this is going to have a really big impact on how you actually want to play in combat. At the beginning of any given day, you can always re-choose new apparitions. You're never locked into the ones that you start with. You can have a favorite apparition that maybe follows through the rest of the game with you. I've been playing a character who was a prisoner for a very long time, and he only had his compatriot was this other person imprisoned with him. And it wasn't until they escaped together that he realized he was the only person who could see his compatriot. That is his apparition, a witness to ancient battles. And whenever they go into battle together, he allows that compatriot to possess him and fight on his behalf because he's not good with weapons, but his apparition is. And so he has the sage animistic practice. This is the one for when you really kind of want to dedicate to one primary spirit. You become very difficult for anybody else to take control of you or dictate what you do any of your actions or things like that. You get an apparition's possession ability where for one action, you just are like, yo, get in here, homie. And your apparition jumps in, takes control of your body. You become immune to control effects. You become immune to effects that attempt to influence your actions, such as charm or command, unless they're cast by a significantly more powerful character than you. But some of your actions are limited because you can only stride, strike, cast an apparition spell, cast a vessel spell, or use an action that has the apparition trait. And so you get feats that are specifically kind of tied to your apparitions and the ways that they affect and interact with you. And apparitions possession is really about leaning into those abilities and having a spiritual partner who you let them use your body to influence the physical world. That's an important difference between the animist and, say, a summoner. A summoner has an eidolon that is a physical thing that shows up on the battlefield and fights for them. The apparitions that an animist is bonded to, they don't have that ability. They can't take physical form. They need the animist to be their window into the mortal world, their intercessor who does things for them. And so they very much share their power and their perspectives with each other.
That's really a thing I like in a lot of the kind of abilities, in a lot of the feats. There's a lot of, you really feel like you're having this like entity come in, come into your body to help you do something, or like leave to go help do something on the mortal world, but you are very much kind of the anchor for this very intangible presence. I think it's a really cool vibe.
Yeah. The other animistic practice is the channeler. Channeler is the answer to, like, well, what if I don't want to be bonded to just one apparition? I want to do more of the things. I want to have multiple spirits who are all interfacing with me and all affecting what I do, and I want to utilize all of their power. And so that's where the channeler comes in. The channeler gives you a unique action called Apparition's Whirl. And you can do it one action once per round in combat. You can change which of your apparitions is your primary. So from round to round, you can be tied to the apparition that gives you blasty magic and really focuses on kind of destructive stuff. And then you can switch over to the apparition that instead gives you sneaky, controlling magic. And you can constantly be bouncing between them to kind of optimize what focus spells you have access to, how you combine them, and how you make this very fluid kind of character. And so those are kind of the two toggles that are available in this playtest for the animist. The sage, who is very dedicated to that one particular entity that they really lean into, and the channeler, who really just wants to make as many spirit friends as they can and learn to mix and match and utilize those abilities in unique ways. As you level up, you'll gain all kinds of feats, and we're experimenting with a lot of different ways to utilize and deploy resources here that, I don't think all of these feats are going to make it out of the playtest into the final because we tried a lot of weird stuff. We've got some feats in here where you have one of your apparitions literally become the wind beneath your wings, and it carries you around and you can fly. And but while it's doing that, you don't get to benefit from its knowledge and its spells because it's too
It's
busy
busy.
carrying you around. Yes. You have some other feats where you burn your connection with the apparition entirely, because at later levels, like I said, you'll have 3 or 4 of these that you bond with at the beginning of the day. And so maybe you want to quicken a spell and you need the apparition's power to help you do that. Instead of being limited to once per day or some other kind of time-based usage, what it does is it actually, your apparition sacrifices their bond with you. You use that power to cast your spell more quickly, and then that apparition is just gone. You don't get its benefits anymore until the next time you do your daily preparations, but you still have your other apparition companions, and it becomes kind of a neat way of deciding how much do I want to retain the versatility of having all of these spiritual companions, and how much do I maybe want that spike in power right now of letting one of them sacrifice their bond with me in the moment to give me a surge of potency. So that's kind of what you can be looking forward to here. And now I'm going to jump into my last few minutes of wrapping up here by talking about the specific apparitions I've been using on my playtest animist. So I've given the cue. Hopefully you should be seeing some slides right about now of these cool apparitions that I'm going to talk about. The first one, if I've set this up correctly, should be the Custodian of Groves and Gardens. And this is the one that you see with Samo, that elk spirit that has the the leaves and living things growing from its antlers. And when you bond with a Custodian of Groves and Gardens, it shares its knowledge with you, which gives you the farming lore and herbalism lore skills, and these will automatically scale up as you grow more powerful and are able to access more of the apparition's knowledge. And it gives you a variety of spells, the Tanglevine cantrip, and then things like Wall of Shrubs, Gentle Breeze, spells that really play into that theme of groves and gardens that are unique to it. It gives you a vessel spell called Garden of Healing, which is a cool 1 action, sustained up to 1 minute, 10-foot aura that gives everybody around you little pulses of healing that helps you be really good at keeping them alive and keeping them in the moment. And one of the really fun things about every apparition is, so like a cleric, their big 10th level spell is Avatar, where they become an avatar of their god, right? Well, every one of your apparitions can possess your body, take on its ultimate form, and has its own unique avatar ability. So the unique avatar form of the Custodian of Groves and Gardens is the Elysian Field, which has these non-lethal, high-range abilities that allow you to, fight and impose peace through violence in a way that is appropriate to the nature of this spirit. The next one is the Imposter in Hidden Places. And this apparition is about kind of dark places, sneaky things, making enemies uncomfortable and disturbed. So it gives you fortune-telling lore and underworld lore as the abilities. It knows a lot about these things and can impart that knowledge to you. And it gives you spells like Telekinetic Hand, hallucination, invisibility. Its vessel spell, and I know there's a typo here, don't worry, we're fixing it for the release that you'll all have access to tomorrow, is Discomfiting Whispers, which is an aura around you. It's a small aura, but it makes it very difficult for enemies to damage you because it has the misfortune trait, and whenever they try to attack within your aura, they have to roll twice and take the worst result. And if that results in a failure, they also take void damage because the spirits inflict damage upon them for their failure. This is really great for being a caster who kind of wants to support the party and avoid being damaged themselves, and really kind of punish enemies if they get in there and try to take you out of the fights. The next one that we're going to talk about is the Steward of Stone and Fire. And this is very much the apparition if you want to be a blaster. You want to hurt enemies. You want to unleash the primal powers of earth and fire and volcanoes upon them. So, of course, you get mountain lore and volcano lore, because this spirit knows a lot about those things. And it gives you apparition spells like ignition and fireball, and of course, volcanic eruption and earthquake. It gives you a vessel spell called Earth's Bile, where you create a burst of damaging fire and earth. And then every time you sustain this, you do it again. So as long as this is your primary apparition and you're using its vessel spell, you're just constantly causing explosions all over the map and dealing that extra damage. And it's only a single action to keep sustaining it. So you can also use those cool spells like Fireball and stuff like that to just really be a constant force of nature's destruction. And this has one of my personal favorite avatar forms as well. Blood of Planets, which is very fast and has a very fast burrow speed. It can ignore difficult terrain. Its melee attack is Avalanche of Molten Stone, where it just slams people with a wave of earth or fire. And its ranged attack is Cleansing Eruption, where it causes a burst of flame at a very large range to damage people. And this is the version that you're really going to want to put in that primary slot if what you want to do is blast and burn and destroy your enemies. The final one, before I hand the mic over to James here, that I want to talk about is the Witness to Ancient Battles. And I was telling you at the start about the character I've been playtesting who has his buddy who possesses his body to fight for him. And that is what this apparition represents. It gives you battlegrounds lore and heraldry lore because it knows a lot about ancient battles because it witnessed them, and the various forces that might be involved in those kinds of events. It gives you cantrips like Shield and Runic Weapon and Ghostly Weapon. Its avatar form is the General of Endless Battle, who moves very quickly, cannot be immobilized, and who does not have a ranged attack, but does have a 15-foot melee attack called Final Strike, which is an agile fatal D12 ability that does 68 plus 6 slashing damage. And it's for when you just want to slash enemies to pieces with your power. And you might be thinking, but Mike, isn't this a spellcaster chassis? Normally, they're not as good at fighting with weapons and hitting things as martial characters are. Well, that's why this gives you the Vessel spell Embodiment of Battle. That apparition comes in and it guides your movements and abilities. It gives you a bonus to your attack and damage rolls. It gives you the reactive strike reaction. So when an enemy does certain things within your reach, you can punish them for it by striking them with weapons. It increases your proficiency and makes you as proficient with martial weapons as you are with simple weapons, gives you your weapons critical specialization. The price you pay for this, of course, is that this spirit is a being of combat. It's not very interested in magic, and so it imposes a penalty on your ability to cast spells that affect enemies. While you have this thing possessing you, you are not as good at your spell casting as you normally are in exchange for that boost to your attacking power that it gives you. So that is a little sneak peek into the apparitions of the animist, a little bit about how it works and what it does, and a little bit about Samo, who is the iconic representative of this class. At this point, I'm going to go ahead, I'm going to hand the mic over to James, so James can tell you about the exemplar and Nahoa.
All right. Yeah, so the exemplar is the second of the two classes that are coming in this book. And I know one of the things that Mike said up front is that these are classes that have not existed in Golarion before. And the reason that the exemplar has not existed in Golarion before is because they come to be as a result of the events of this book. Lots of things happen in this book, and some of them change the way that some stuff works. The exemplar is a hero who has somehow come to seize a bit of the divine. They have something called a divine spark within them. And this enables them to accomplish all sorts of powerful abilities and deeds. They are very much inspired by these kind of like folk heroes and larger than life tales from mythologies from all over the world. Going into this, we were looking at all sorts of touch points, like Hercules, or like Sun Wukong, Cuchulainn, and Maui is one of them as well. And you can see some of that inspiration here in our new iconic Nahoa. Nahoa is a farmer originally from the Okayo Ocean. This is the ocean that rests between Tian Sha and Arcadia, where we haven't really seen a lot from here before. We do have one of the four great nations of the Okayo are the Tautake people, who are introduced in P1. And the second is where Nahoa is from. Nahoa is from the Olehala area. He essentially grew up on a very rainy island. He has a ton of younger sisters who I was taking care of. He's a little bit of a jock. But essentially his island came to be attacked by this great demon periodically. And so he essentially realized somebody had to come up and stop it, and he did. And in fighting this giant demon, first of all, they both wounded each other greatly. And in the process of this, Nahoa was basically claimed some of this power and became a Nephilim in the process. One of the things with the remaster that we have is that the newly reimagined Nephilim versatile heritage allows you to have, the influence of other planes, and not necessarily in the way of heritage. So while Samo was born a Nephilim, Nahoa became one as part of this process. And then, as he fought this giant demon, they essentially crash land much closer to the inner sea, and that's how he ends up there.
They get hit by a gobbet of god stuff that falls out of the sky when a god is ripped in half. I'm just going to give it to y'all right now, so you can just dwell on that for a while.
I hate when that happens. That happened to me when I was going to work the other day. I love this character design a lot. This sort of Pacific Islander art is something I've always it's something I grew up with and I find very striking and cool. And I remember we did, as always, both of these character designs are by Wayne Reynolds. Everyone knows Wayne. And Wayne's designs have always been something that I wasn't really able to visualize with this. I was like, well, Pacific Islanders don't wear a lot of, they don't wear plate armor, they don't wear all this other stuff. So we worked together along with our art director on this project, the always awesome Sonia Morris. And I think this design is super cool. I'm really into it. It's a little bit Hawaiian, a little bit Tongan, and I just think he's super cool. So yeah.
The rattan style armor, we talked about a bit about how probably in game that's going to use the same stats as Leaf Weave, because the exemplar has that light armor proficiency, and that matches up very well with the kind of appearance and everything there. So
yeah, kind of getting into that. This is a class that we wanted to, if you want to have really high quality weapons and armor, and we will get into the weapons they use in a little bit, don't worry. You can do that, but we also want you to just be, a kid in a normal toga with a normal spear who just can wreck stuff with it. So they are just as good unarmored, and they're just as good with simple weapons as they are more powerful ones. So if you want to just use a normal spear, a sling, one of these more basic weapons, you will be able to do that. So yeah. So that's what an exemplar is, but what do they do? They have this spark of divine power. And the main thing that this spark does is that they can use it to basically, it is great. It is very powerful, and they can focus it through specific sacred vessels called icons. So every exemplar has 3 icons. One is on their body. It marks them as something with a touch of extra in it. One is something they wear, and one is a weapon they use to kind of carve out things onto the world. I think we have some examples on the next slide here. And as an exemplar, you will have these 3 places that you can place your divine spark. And each icon has what's called an eminence effect and what's called a transcendence effect. As long as your spark is in that icon, it's constantly powering it to perform some sort of heroic ability. The first one here we have is called Skin Hard as Horn. This is, you may see the inspirations here. This makes your skin harder to break with weapons of some kind, but there's also one unprotected spot on your body, so it doesn't apply against crits. And as long as your divine spark is invested in your skin in this way, you have resistance. You can also essentially burn your divine spark through one of your icons to transcend mortal limitations for one brief act. If you do this, it typically gives you some sort of cool ability, and then the force of this blasts your spark out of that icon and you put it in a different one. So in this way, you have a wide suite of abilities that are done from calling on your various kind of divine implements in this way. And, combat may start and the enemy is far away, and you may place your spark into your sandals. They'll make you go fast. You close the gap with a burst of speed, and doing this places your spark into your weapon, and then use that to strike in some sort of cool maneuver. And now you're up in the enemy's face, and so you think that your spark should probably go into your body where it can best protect you against harm. And so in this way, you have a number of cool abilities, but you always have to be kind of thinking a little bit ahead. But no matter what you do, you'll have these kind of, they're a little bit more powerful, but they're also ones that you have to kind of, you won't always be able to do them, in much the same way how something like the kineticist has powerful abilities, but they can use relatively freely. You can use these abilities relatively freely as well, but you just have to be sure that, you have to power up your weapon before you can, hurl it at them in a blast of lightning or something. The other two
These
we have.
themes of versatility that move between them, this is really a shared thing of both classes. Both classes have these kind of cool mode change abilities. They have this ability to kind of move and adapt to different situations, and they do it in different ways. But it's very much this kind of coordinated theme of both these books. The system has reached a certain level of maturity, and so it's really exciting to be able to give people kind of this greater degree of control and flexibility over what they're doing in combat, and emphasize different strengths and options based on how they want to adapt to the battlefield.
Yeah. And, going through the kind of inspirations we have here, if you go through mythologies, you have heroes, but you also have the objects that they're associated with. You have Mjolnir, you have like the Ruibang, these kind of things. So the other two we have here are the Noble Branch. This is any spear weapon. It's deals additional spirit damage. This is a good time to note that this, like everything we have going forward, is very much remaster compatible. And spirit damage is something new coming from the remaster. It has to deal with just pure kind of spiritual energy in this way, and it is very much traced through both of these classes in a way which makes sense. These are classes that interact with the divine, they interact with apparitions and that sort of thing. And the third one we have here is the Victor's Wreath. This can be either headwear or a sash, just depending on what suits your fashion a little bit more. And this one gives a little bit more of a supportive benefit. And you'll see kind of this theme throughout some of the icons, where the weapon icons are a little bit more offensive, the body icons are a little more defensive, and the worn ones are a little more utility. So you pick 3 of these at first level, and they become part of your character. If you want to apply runes and such to your weapon, you can do that. All that means is that the weapon that you've been kind of tying to your legend becomes more powerful as it goes along. One little touch I like about these is that you don't buy them at level 1, which isn't really a whole thing, but I like the idea that if a spear is going to be part of your legend, you may just wake up the night that you become an exemplar, you may wake up and just find yourself holding on to a spear, a sash, and that sort of thing. This is not the only thing that exemplars have to express their concept also. The one thing that we touched on kind of early in this process was the idea of epithets. So as your exemplar grows more powerful in level, they will also gain epithets. These start quite small. I think the first ones that you get are all just something like brave or cunning, or my personal favorite, which is mournful. And then they become a little more florid as you gain higher and higher level, as you've had a chance to do more deeds. This one here is called Whose Cry is Thunder. This is not Nahoa's, but this is one that I like a lot. So Whose Cry is Thunder basically connects your deeds to the sky. This can mean that any spirit damage you deal with any of your abilities, you can decide instead is electricity damage, because it's crackling lightning. This means that this gives you an ability that powers up your weapon. Anytime you crit with your weapon, lightning strikes someone nearby, which I think is good fun. And it has the weapon in a way that turns it into a blaze of lightning. So the ones we have for the playtest, I'm just going to run through here, is we kind of wanted to hit the classics. So we have our Lancy Sky, of whose cry is thunder, born of the bones of the earth, and restless as the tide. And then the last one we have is Peerless, what's it called? Peerless Under Heaven, I believe, which is our war one. And then you will, much later, you kind of get them in the middle and the beginning, middle, and end of your career. And later you'll have one that speaks a little bit more to your destiny, things like Teacher of Heroes. And that's very much the way that this class kind of looks at those kind of ancient myths. And this is a theme you'll see a little bit in the book. We won't get into it, but it's, if you're a hero, what is kind of the arc of your story. So if you're GMing or you're playing a character, and say, you might want to say, talk to your GM. Say you're interested in taking something like Whose Cry is Thunder, and you're a relatively low level hero. This might be something where you talk to your GM about, like, how would you earn this epithet? Maybe you find yourself in a great battle where at the end you let out a war cry, and as you do, the sky echoes, and then when you get to the appropriate level, you may have earned this name. Maybe you sing very loudly. Maybe you're the one who cries to let everybody know that danger is coming. But we wanted to give this epithet as a thing you can do in story to kind of build towards your power-ups that you're looking for later, not just in terms of I want these cool abilities, but also how does this fit into my story. This is also the rare class, in case that wasn't quite apparent yet. The class is new on the face of Galarian, and they are affected by a rare element in that way. So this class is the rare class. We try to keep it at about the same level of power and narrative interaction as any of our other classes. But because of this kind of tie-in, we thought it appropriate to add this trait onto the class. So this is our first rare class as well. We have a little bit of time, so I want to go into the feats a little bit. This is very much a combat class.
They're so good. And I don't say that because I helped write a couple of them. I say that because they're just so cool.
So the inspiration of this class is very much global mythology, and you'll see that in a lot of these feats. Many of these will do things like, they can gain reactive strike at a higher level with a feat if they want. They can claim bits of domain magic if they want. Many of them will give them additional supernatural abilities or other abilities they can add to their icon. So even if your icon does not have a static ability the whole time, it has something reliable you're always going to love. But something like Leap the Falls here, just as long as your body is empowered by divine energy, turns out so are some of your athletic feats. Then you have ones that can empower your weapons and give them new abilities. Binding Serpent Celestial Arrow allows you to fire an arrow that transforms into serpents that bind your target. These are a little Celtic and a little Hindu, respectively. Mike and I have a fair range of historical knowledge between us. We also worked with a couple of cultural consultants who were able to kind of give us some recommendation in that area. And so we're really hoping that this is a class that takes all of these global kind of myths and lets you put them together into one really awesome kind of heroic character. Yeah, so that is the exemplar.
Yeah, I think everybody was guessing, like, is it going to be a demigod class? And we were like, oh, no, but you're getting pretty close.
But you're close, yeah. Yeah.
I think we're going to have Rue potentially maybe joining us to see if we have some questions from the stream.
Yeah.
I can hear you. People in Twitch who hopefully Rue can see, can you hear Rue?
Getting a lot of hi Rue in the chat. Getting a lot of who dies, which I don't know. You'll have to stay tuned. We cannot hear Rue.
Okay. Rue is working on bringing themselves into the chat, folks. So we will have that adjusted momentarily.
So if you have questions, now would be a great time to drop them in.
Get them queued up.
That should have fixed that. I think I am audible now. And I have my nice document of your questions. Thank you so much to our mods in the chat who have been keeping questions about these classes in the chat for me since I've been running tech. But I'll just kind of pop between them. If there's any particular questions y'all want, if you have the document open, you can highlight them for me and I'll go for that next. And I am going to... Sorry, I'm scrolling down. Start with, can you switch out your spirits to get different apparition spells for the animist if you're dual tradition?
Yeah, so you have 2 apparitions by default that you can bond with at the start of each day. You can choose from any of the apparitions available when you do that. Then, depending on which tradition or practice you have, that'll affect how easy it is to change which one is your primary. If you're a sage, you can only change your primary outside of combat during a 10-minute rest, because you actually have to go through kind of a process of rebonding to the other apparition. And so from the 2 you start with, you can swap to the second one and make it your primary during that break. If you are the channeler, you can use that action that is kind of the main ability of taking that path to switch them as a single action round around. You can constantly juggle between them. As you go up in levels, you get more of those apparitions, but changing them is the same thing. If you're the sage, changing your primary is a thing you do outside of combat. If you're a channeler, changing between them is the kind of core functionality of the thing. Now, once you've chosen your apparitions during your daily preparations, those are the only apparitions that you have access to that day. You can't choose 4 and then during a short rest choose 4 completely different ones, because that would just get a little bonkers and your character wouldn't have very much identity in any given session. So there are some kind of rails that exist there to keep that fair and a easily adjudicated experience for both the player and the GM. But you do have a lot of flexibility within that.
Awesome. I'm gonna bop over to James and Krasimia. Oh, also, if I pronounce your username wrong, I apologize. Krasimia asks, does the exemplar have any healing?
The exemplar is mostly a class that's based around beating up enemies. And so many of their abilities are in service of this. So they have one of the icons allows you to heal yourself. They don't have a ton of healing of their allies. They do have a feat called Fish from the Fall's Edge that allow them to, if an ally would be reduced to 0 HP, they can kind of pull them back from the underworld. But it is a relatively higher level ability. But this is less your healer class, and this is much more of your frontline combatant class. And that's a dynamic that you'll also see throughout the book in kind of how Nahoa and Samo interact throughout the book. These iconics are very much concepted at the same time to kind of move through this book together. So, Mike and I have talked a lot about cool action shots to have our art team work on. So I'm looking forward to it very much.
Yeah, if you've ever listened to me, I use the word cinematic constantly when talking about class and character option design.
Mike, for you, does that mean at higher levels with different apparitions, you'll have up to like 8 lore skills at once?
It does mean you will have access to a lot of lore skills, yes. And y'all can let us know in the playtest whether that is just right or too much. I figure lore skills are generally kind of so specific that it shouldn't be overwhelming for you to manage at the table, because you know what your apparitions are and you know what they're kind of into. So if it comes up, you know that you're going to have it covered and you'll be able to make those checks and gain that knowledge from your apparition. But yeah, it does mean that, and we're looking forward to hearing what that means for all of you as you play test these classes and try them out.
Next up for James, we have, can I expand on what weapons are available to a weapon icon?
Yeah. So this is true of all of the icons. They don't say that this specifically has to be this one magic item or that this specifically must be a, this must be a +1 dagger or something. We want to still give you, like, a large part about expressing your identity as any sort of martial character is kind of what weapon you pick. So we still wanted to give you those options. So the icons are more like categories. The one we showed was Noble Branch. This is very spear-based, so that uses more like a weapon group to determine it. There are others that use other qualifiers. Let me pull this up because I have all the info right here. You have other ones like Fated Shot is for ranged weapons, and it's literally just, it works on any ranged weapon. And you have others that are something like the Gleaming Blade is any weapon that isn't sword or knife group. And then the Titan's Breaker is any weapon that's club, hammers, or axes. So we're looking at a couple of different ways to make it so that the icon abilities are not so generic they seem like they don't really have any identity. They still feel like you're using that weapon. But, if you want to use this using specifically a greatsword or a dagger, or even something like completely different, like an Urumi or something, it'll work. You can still take something that like deals with, you just have to have a weapon that deals slashing damage. So hopefully in this way we have the specificity there dialed in to the point it's fun, but also you have a lot of choice. And if you think that it needs to go up or down, please fill out the playtest surveys. Let us know.
I'm gonna switch back to Mike, and then after this I've got a couple for both of you. So for Mike, are all of the focus spells sustained for 1 minute with something fun happening when you sustain it, or do some of them have other effects?
All of the focus spells that folks are going to be playtesting are 1 action to activate, sustained up to 1 minute, and so they're all built around that same dynamic. I suspect you'll get a bit of a feel for why when you're playtesting, because it really is made to click into those 2 practices in a very particular way. Make sure that you have good, solid, fun ways to use your 3rd action while also being able to cast spells and do all the things that the class also wants to do. So yeah, they all do follow that 1 action and then sustained up to 1 minute paradigm.
Awesome. I'm going to put a little bit of a marketing stop to everyone in the channel. James and Mike are not allowed to tell you who dies and who doesn't. I will be very sad if they do. So sorry that I will be ignoring any questions of that regard. For both of you, what are your guys' favorite feats from each class?
Okay.
You go first.
So
I have
James,
one,
yeah, you go first. You go first.
Okay. This is I don't think it's not a max level ability, but it's very high for exemplar. At the lower levels, when you upgrade your icons, they tend to only give 1 ability, and at the high levels, we kind of take that restraint off. There is a high level feat called 7-Colored Cosmic Bridge that basically has your weapons scatter rainbow colored light everywhere when you hit, and then you can teleport along with that light to anywhere near the enemy. Its transcendence ability is called Fleeting Arc Through Heaven and Earth. It is a giant beam of rainbow energy that blasts everything in a cone, and then you teleport along with it as well. So this is very much inspired by the Bifrost kind of Norse mythology and that sort of thing, but also something that we wanted to bring into the game in a way that, we can hopefully render in a way that takes those themes of, light being fleeting, transporting through space, into the way that makes sense to blast out your weapon in a giant cone. So yeah. It's quite high level,
cool.
Yes. So God, there's so many, because we had like just a lot of fun while we were doing this. But one of the things the apparitions give the animist is these cool wandering feats, where you can change out feats at certain levels, like 12th level, to adapt to the apparitions that you prepare that day. So if you have a feat that is tied to a particular apparition, and then you don't want to use that apparition one day, you can also swap out the feat at that level to either be a generic wandering feat or to match one of the new apparitions that you bonded to. And one of the kind of fun ones there that is tied to the imposter in hidden places in particular is Shadows Within Shadows, which is a reaction you get. And if you would be detected by an enemy seeking you, or an enemy would succeed at a counteract check to end a spell you have used to make yourself hidden, concealed, invisible, or undetected, then your attuned apparition is just like, no, and it forces the enemy to re-roll the triggering check and take the lower result. So it makes it really hard to counteract your invisibility and your sneakiness while you are protected by an apparition whose shtick is specifically being sneaky.
I have this image of the channelers specifically as like doing their daily preparations. They've just come to a large forest from, I don't know, they were in a desert beforehand and they're just sitting down at the beginning of the day, and you just see this like wheel of apparitions around them, and they're like, I will pick this one, kind of a thing. They have that and that wandering ability lets you very much like bring that flexibility in. I think that's cool.
Yeah. I'm gonna add one more feat, because I mentioned that everybody has an immortality capstone ability, right? Both of these classes have their own unique form of immortality. We'll have a bunch of cool archetypes that give that as well. And so the animist is Eternal Guide, which has a frequency of once per week. The spirits who guide you carry your soul back to the community you call home. Choose a single settlement with a population of at least 100 people. Whenever you die and are not returned to life within 24 hours by other means, as long as the settlement still exists and there are no other claims on your soul, such as a contract with the devil, and nothing trapping your soul, such as being slain by a soul eater, your attuned apparitions magically transport your soul, remains, and all of the items you had worn or carried at the time of your death back to the chosen settlement where you are reborn. The nature of this rebirth varies between animists. Some magically reinvigorate their physical forms to return to life in their original bodies, while others pass their knowledge and power on to a new inheritor who effectively takes their place in the grand story of existence. Regardless of the exact nature of your rebirth, you or your inheritor are fully restored with your level, experience, and equipment intact 1 week after your death. If you choose an inheritor and their ancestry is different than yours, your attribute modifiers don't change, but you can freely retrain your ancestry feats and any other feats that relied on them as prerequisites as part of your rebirth.
Sorry, the story must go on.
That's so cool. I'm so excited.
There's no limit to the number of times you can be reborn, but if you die before a week has passed since your last rebirth, neither you nor your returned apparitions have recovered enough energy to complete the process again, and your soul passes to whatever final reward it has earned. So if you play a little too fast and loose with your own mortality, it can end up causing you to no longer be an immortal, constantly reborn being. But as long as you don't constantly throw yourself into the grinder, you can just continue to carry on your story and be an animist into perpetuity.
One of my questions on here was about immortal capstone feats, so thanks for pulling that in. Before I move on, do you want to share one for the exemplar, James?
Yeah. So the exemplars is a little more in the moment because they are very much get up in your face character. Theirs is just called the Place Beyond Mortality. This is just one of those that like you just cease aging when you die, and this is one thing that we're experimenting with the optional kind of focus points, much like Monk has for this class. And just like when you would die, you can burn out all of your focus points and not die. You just can. You can still only do it once a day, so but like when you do, you heal yourself, you immediately stand back up and you summon all of your armaments back to you, and then you can immediately empower whatever of your armaments you want. So it's very much that like HP bar goes down, HP bar comes back up kind of feat, which just makes a little more sense.
Not end.
Yeah, and something that makes maybe a little more sense for a frontline combatant versus like a literal storyteller in the in the thing.
James, could you build an exemplar to be stealth based?
They do not have many abilities in the playtest that are attempting to have them be stealth based. A lot of their stuff is very up in the face. Heroes live bigger lives than anyone else, kind of a thing. That being said, they do have a couple of ways to get
right here for my sneaky exemplar I was playtesting.
I'm getting there, man.
Day.
Let me get there, man. They do have some abilities. One of the top epithets is called Thief of Moonlight. This has this snatches the light from enemies' eyes that makes them dazzled or unable to see, which, I mean, that's one way to sneak. You're not hiding, but also if you use their transcendence ability, it's called All That Shines Belongs to Me. It makes you invisible. People you pass near become blinded, and the more people whose light you steal with this, the longer the effect goes on. There is also the kind of one feat that is based on Hawaiian and also Chinese mythology in this is called Sunwrecker, where you literally attack the sun. This casts darkness on everything around you and also gives you dark vision. So that is another way to affect stealth in this class. So they can be stealthy, but only in ways that are very bombastic, if that makes sense.
Since a few folks have asked, I think we mentioned it at some point, but could you give the key ability scores and hit dice for both of these new classes?
Yeah, so the Animist, like I mentioned earlier, is a wisdom-based divine caster, so their key attribute is wisdom, and they are an 8+ con HP character.
Exemplar is a frontline combatant, so there's a strength or dex, and they are also kind of meant to get hit a lot to some degree, so they have 10+ con as their hit points. And then none of their icons will change that, but they will kind of affect their durability in certain ways.
For Michael, what was the reason for having certain vessel spells affect all creatures in the emanation instead of all allies or all enemies?
A lot of the vessel spells are very potent, and so they use kind of the standard design paradigms for these more aggressively tuned kind of abilities. We really wanted to allow people to experience kind of the far edge of this and have some tactical elements. We may rein these in or dial them up post playtest. It's one of the reasons we do the playtest is to hear from you all on what you think. But what we really wanted to do was kind of be able to give the most, as James said, bombastic and kind of awesome version of these abilities, and getting to that kind of upper edge of how fantastic and cool they can be means they can't be as discerning as maybe a less effective or less efficient ability might otherwise be.
Yeah, it's very much what the playtest is. We have a sense of where sort of the boundaries are for all the classes we've done in the past, and we kind of we want to try and find new ones, and that means we have to go a little outside. And I'm sure some of these are strong and some of these are not, and we're hopefully gonna find that out by having everyone play through them. Also, I just want to hear about what characters everyone builds. I will be lurking the forums for that information.
That's me too. This is a question that's also important to me as a person. Are there any pets, animal companions, or followers available for either class?
It is not a standard feature of the exemplar. That might be something that we think about later. The exemplar right now is very much in this space of they are very much a part of their kind of adventuring party, but they are not a pet class per se, as it were.
Yeah, nor is the animist. Like I was saying with the apparitions, the kind of fundamental divide that the animist walks is that their apparitions do not have the ability to affect the physical world without them, and the animist is given their window into the spirit world and that power via the apparition. So we wanted to keep that line very clean, and as such, there aren't any pet options in this playtest for the animist.
We're getting close to the end here, and I want to end with a kind of fun and silly question. Vanessa asks for no direction. How are each of the classes like Batman?
So the animist, I think, is like Batman in that as long as Batman knows what he's getting into, he will have an array of tools available for every situation. And once you've got your full suite of apparitions at play and you have all of your other abilities that click into them, an animist is going to be able to, in the moment, have a really excellent solution that they can draw upon to take out the bad guy as it is called for.
The exemplar is like Batman in that even though Batman is very sneaky, you always know when Batman is here because Batman shows up, the lightning dramatically flashes against the Art Deco buildings in the background. You see the silhouette, and then he proclaims that he is Batman, and then stuff goes down. In this way, the exemplar is the exemplar is a class that I think we want to lead into that same sort of very kind of cinematic atmospheric type of thing. Batman also uses many tools, which the exemplar has in spades. So if you were Batman, what would you do? I don't know. Your cape would be an icon. Maybe your grappling hook.
Your utility belt, maybe.
Your utility belt just is one of your divine relics.
Yeah. Before we close out today, I want to take a moment to hand the mic to James for some current events that I believe he wanted to touch on today.
Yeah. So this is the first time that we've kind of done an icon, heavily inspired by Pacific Islander culture. I was born and raised in Hawaii. I grew up, my grandfather's native Hawaiian. I don't know if some of you have seen the news. There was a very destructive wildfire in Lahaina, Maui that has really done quite a lot of damage recently in the past. So if any of you are wondering how you might reach out to help, if any of you like the exemplar, I would maybe ask that if you're able to, you maybe slide maybe a cost of a cup of coffee worth of donations. You can look at either Maui Nui Strong, which has a good list of resources that you can kind of pick and choose from, as well as places to donate physical supplies, etc., or the Hawaii Community Foundation Maui Strong Fund, which is a great way to get kind of funds just to people. And that's all. I just wanted to bring that up since it's a recent thing, and it seemed a little odd to have a very cool, large luau boy here and not say something about my home. So that's all.
Yeah.
I wanted that to be the last thing we went out on, but I forgot to say something earlier. So I do have to throw out real quick an important thing for our partners. There will be a module on Foundry available tomorrow that will allow full class builds of both the Animist and the Exemplar for people who use Foundry. And then our partners at Demiplane will also be hosting a free character builder. So you'll be able to go set up a free Demiplane account and test out the Exemplar and Animist using their character builder. I wish I had said that before James's thing. So
oh no, I'd rather lead on a more fun note.
So thank you both for being here and talking about your classes. If folks would like to find you on the internet and you want them to, where can they find you?
In so long as it continues to be worth my time and I am not driven away, you can find me under @MichaelJ.Sayre1 on Twitter, and that's kind of currently my primary social outreach. I'm looking at diversifying outwards, but I'm doing it slowly. So
I am on Twitter at a handle that does not translate to speech very well, but you will find it because I will repost the thing, and I am also on Blue Sky as James Case. And I am also lurking in all of your Discords and Reddits, so I am also there.
And I am on Twitter as @IlanaKnight13, and everywhere else is just Ilana Knight. And I also work on the marketing Paizo channels, so if you're talking to Paizo, there's like a 20% chance you're talking to me. Who knows? But yes, thank you all again for coming to our playtest stream. And the playtest drops tomorrow, right? What time, Michael?
I believe we are going to go live, and you'll be able to start downloading the playtest at 10 a.m. off of the Paizo.com site, and there will be a landing page set up specifically for that. You'll also want to probably grab the remaster package that we put up on the website alongside Rage of Elements, because certain spells and other options from that are used in the playtest.
Wonderful. And I hope you all have a Pacific time. Yes, 10 a.m. Pacific time.
Yes.
I also forget the time zones. But yes, so thank you very much for joining us, and thank you, James and Mike, for taking the time to talk to us today. And be sure to come back tomorrow at 4 p.m. also Pacific time for Paizo Live, where we'll be talking about some of our upcoming products for Paizo with more of our creatives. Good evening, everyone.
Thanks all.
And you're...
All right. Fantastic. Well done, everybody.
Whew, there we go.